Welcome into today's show, the Barbecue Life, powered by Hound, Hogs, Barbecue Supply. Take a minute, check them out on Instagram and Facebook at Hound Hogs BBQ Supply Co. That is the same website address you can find them at as well to place your order. So today, I'm joined by a fellow pitmaster hailing from Fletcher, North Carolina, Mr. Stephen Parris. He's with Brother-in-Law Barbecue Team. Had the pleasure of sitting next to Stephen at the most recent class we both attended, which was the GBC, the Georgia Barbecue Championship Cook School. A great day and a half of absorbing nothing but all things competition barbecue. So anyway, Stephen, thanks for taking the time to join us on the show.
Hey, Kurt. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I enjoyed getting to know you at the class.
So it was an action-packed class, not a whole lot of downtime as are most classes. They're pretty info intensive, which should be the case anyway, because you got to pack a lot of information in there. So, but as I said, so Stephen is with Brother-in-Law Barbecue Team. They're based out of Fletcher, North Carolina. How long have you guys been competing, Stephen?
So, Kurt, we started, I think our first backyard competition was in 2014. Literally just won, I think maybe won that year, middle of the pack, up at Franklin, North Carolina, which used to be a great competition. And there were 12 or 14 teams. Funny story about that, we're sitting in the truck, we just pulled on site. It's raining sideways. And I look at Ben and we're kind of deciding like, is this going to happen? And I said, all right, man, let's get the canopy out and at least get dry, let me get some of our stuff dry. And he's like, canopy? He says, I brought a camping tent. So long story short, we're making our, first trip to Walmart and the first 5 minutes of the competition. And we got a canopy and got set up and got dried and we made all our turn-ins and kind of caught the bug. Cooked a couple of other competitions, and we used to go to Tryon, North Carolina, which was a great, probably 80 pro teams. We used to go to that competition all the time as a family, and we'd eat and walk around and look at the rigs, and that kind of got us started, And we go down there, and one time one of the teams brought us up on his trailer and gave us some ribs as a family, and it was like mind blowing. We're like, how can something be that much better than the vendors down the row or whatever? And kind of came full circle. That was our first pro event, was Tryon. We went back 2 years later and got a rib call. It was like 78 teams, and we were hooked. At that point, it was like that was we were done and finished I think 19th or 20th overall. So we thought, at that point we're good to go. We're going to be in it. So we cook 8 to 10 a year. We both got 3 kids, and he's married to my sister. Ben's my partner. So we don't get to do the 25 to 30 events that a lot of the teams were out there competing, and that makes it hard. I mean, full disclosure, it's you give those teams an advantage, and they don't need much of advantage as good at cooks they are. And when you're doing something that many more times, it's hard. It's hard to compete, but the competitive nature of us, we try to make it work, and we do okay. But it's a lot of fun, a lot of friends, and getting out there and hanging out, Thursday and Friday night. So
I think you talked a little bit about balance there, finding that balance, of juggling your family obligations, career obligations, et cetera. I want to come back to that. So you started in 2014 as a backyard. 2 years later, 2016 rolls around. You make the jump to pro. Here's the big question I have, though. How did this entire journey start? So take me back prior to 2014, right? So what was the genesis to getting you guys started in this crazy world that we've all come to love of competitive barbecue?
Well, obviously the TV show Pitmasters, everyone watched it. I still have them on my, on my TiVo or whatever. I got a little cabinet smoker, Walmart, just like a lot of people have started out, and to say that the food was black when that came off that thing. I thought, if you didn't have smoke coming out the whole time, that you were doing something wrong. So first couple racks of ribs were just like charred, unbelievable. And my brother-in-law got an egg, a big green egg, which we used to compete for a long time. And we rolled it on, and we finally figured out, we're like, this can't keep, it was just too cumbersome and too heavy. And we both built drums and won a lot of money on that one homemade drum, and it finally gave it up a couple of months ago. But the cliche is that, you cook for your friends and family, and everybody says it's great, and that's kind of what happened with us. But like I said, the Tryon really planted the seed in both of us. We'd get down there and hang out and watch those teams and watch them run the turn ins, and it was just kind of like, this is something we'd like to try to do. And North Carolina at that point had a lot of competitions, and you didn't have to go far to cook competitions. Now it seems like a lot of them have canceled and stuff, but that was kind of the genesis of where we started. My wife's always been very encouraging to go out and do it. Now my kids kind of go with me some, and she'll stay at home, which is, I think, probably good for both of us. But I don't know that there's a something I can pinpoint other than we just kind of started, I think men at this point like to smoke meat, and that's kind of where we started. So,
amen to that. Nothing wrong with the humble beginnings there. And I think, an important point that I want to camp out on for a second for our listeners who are in similar situations. Steven has a family. I've got a family. Most of the younger teams, and I say younger, I'm using that word loosely. Most of the younger teams have families. So the point I'm making here is that you don't have to commit to competing in 25, 30, 40 cooks a year. You can get plenty of good experience, 8 to 10, maybe 12 cooks a year. Now, are you going to be as good as the folks that are doing 40 a year? Let's be real. Probably not. And that's just, you might get a good table, you might get some calls, but really the folks that are at the very top are doing this 35, 40, 45 times a year. So, it's hard to catch up with them, but I also think that, it's, yes, of course, we all want to win. Yes, of course, we all want to get big checks. We all want to get on stage. That's very important. I think if that's your only focus, though, going into competitive barbecue, you're going to be really disappointed, and you're going to miss all of the great memories that you could be making with your kids, with your friends, with your spouse, whatever, because there's plenty of good memories that we've made, and our results were absolutely horrible. Like you talked about I think it was the first contest where it was raining, and you guys are trying to make things happen with a camping tent, which is pretty funny if you think about it.
Yeah, it was.
But that reminds me of the very last competition we cooked, which was Pig Fest down in Lakeland. And hey, there's a lot going on there. I don't know if you've ever been to Pig Fest, but there's a lot going on.
I've heard it's right.
And we had a terrible cook. We got a first call, but everything else was like 45th place. So I guess, but we had a great time. My boys won some trophies. Like, they don't care what place their old man gets. They just want to beat dad. So, I guess my main point there is just, for the newer teams out there, yes, we want to win. We're competitive. Yes, we want to win money. Yes, we want to hear our names called. Don't get so focused on that you miss out on those really important moments with your friends and your family and your kids is really where I wanted to camp out on that for a second. So, all right. So we're going back in time again, right? So 2014, you start a backyard. 2016, you make the jump to go pro.
Correct.
What was the mindset? I'm really curious about mindset. What was the mindset like with you and your team, which is just you and your brother-in-law, I believe.
Correct.
Hence the name, brother-in-law barbecue.
Yeah, not
So
terribly
what was the
creative
mindset when you said, you know what, we've done backyard, let's take it up a notch?
Well, so I've got friends that have went straight to the pro division, starting right off, and you're going to take your lump. So, we took ours, and we took backyards for 2 years, but I do think that the backyard helped us learn, you know, a lot about how turn-ins work, about how the festival works, how the organizers do. A thing that not a lot of people think about was, you know, we were no threat to those pro teams. And, you know, you befriend some of those pro teams as a backyard team. I mean, I'm instant messaging them. I'm going to their tents or their trailers. I'm asking questions. They're not worried about me. They're like, I mean, they're helping us out, you know, like crazy. A lot of people don't talk about that. But once we finally started hitting in backyard, I think we got 2 reserves in a row. And we're like, you know, these teams that we're beating or they're beating us is like minuscule. I said, you know, there's not that. I think our last backyard reserve was at Cornelia, Georgia, which was a little contest. And the team that won it was a pro team that had bumped down because the pro side was full. Beat us like 2 points or whatever. And we're like, you know, it's time to you know, spread our wings and go. And it turned out great. You know, obviously the brisket and the money is a little bit more, but you know, we looked at it as like we've kind of exhausted everything in the backyard division that we've wanted to learn and wanted to kind of see how the timelines worked. And we're ready to go, and we did, and still are. You know, and we don't cook enough contests to ever. I don't think to ever get burnt out. You hear some of the teams talk about, you know, I cook 25, 30 comps, and we're burnt out. We don't do that many, so we pick the ones we want to do within, you know, the 4 to 5 hour range, and that's the ones we cook. And most of the time it's our same buddies that cook around and stuff. So we have a good time with it still. We still like it. And Ben's job, I'm off on Fridays, so I a lot of times go down and set up, and his job don't allow him to be there that early. So a lot of times that's the hard, you know, setting up by yourself, but got buddies that come over and help. And so it's still fun, and it's a passion of mine, and I don't think it's going to go away for a while. So, but yeah, the backyard definitely. I encourage people to do it. I think it was wonderful for us. We learned a lot, and I think, you know, there are people that jump to the pros, and there's some people that do really well, but it wasn't for us, and I think we made the right decision to go and do it that way. So.
But the important thing is that you made the decision and you did it. And I think that right there, making the decision is half the battle. Most of the worry, the fear, whatever you want to call it, that teams have about going from backyard to pro or just about competing at all is the unknown and failure. And I'm here to tell you that you're going to fail a lot. So you need to embrace it and get used to it. And what's funny is when you think you've got a great cook, usually your results are terrible. And when you think you have a terrible cook, your results are better than you thought they would be. I don't know why that is. It just is.
I don't either, but you're exactly right. I mean, there's been so many contests where, like, you know, chicken was terrible, and you're like, 3rd place, wow, you know, and that makes you start questioning, you know, maybe I don't know as much about this as I think I do, or you know, but you're right. I mean, you know, towards the end of the year, it seems like you always kind of get figured out, and then, you know, November, December hit, it's like you forget everything again when you first cook in March. But it's a humbling sport, you know, obviously, or hobby, or whatever you want to classify it as. But it's so much fun when you get one of those cheap $3 trophies and a little gas money home. You know, it feels like
I was going to say the check is I want to make sure I get that check. They can mail me the trophy. I'll get that later. But
oh yeah. And the ones that pay in cash are even better. So.
That's right. Now, have you guys branched out and done some, you know, vending locally or any catering or anything like that to kind of help offset things a bit?
Yeah, you know, we've done some catering jobs. My problem with catering is you know, we cook on drums, and I don't know if I mentioned that, but we're not really set up for that. I've turned down a lot of wedding receptions and stuff just because I didn't have the equipment really to do that. I've been looking maybe for a bigger smoker to add some more, weight to it. But our drums, not that you can't do it, but it makes it harder when you're cooking on. We're set up to cook for judges, in a 6-piece box versus pounds and pounds of pulled pork. But a little bit. I know you were doing some vending at some of the competitions, and that, I mean, there's times where I've thought about it, and there's times where I'm like, the last thing I want to do after cooking, all night is sell something to someone. But I think that's a good idea to do, and it's just something we've not really done a lot of. But that might be a way to offset, expenses and whatnot. But
Well, you bring up a good point. And I think it's important to think about, teams out there that are either looking to get started or maybe looking at like different smokers. Maybe they're going from drums to a gravity fed, or maybe they're going from a stick burner to drums or whatever. It's something to think about,
Right.
because if you do have, reduced capacity, it is going to limit you to what you can do, during the week for catering, vending, that type of stuff. And so I would say for those teams that haven't yet decided on what kind of equipment they want, really think long and hard about, are you going to want to vend? Are you going to want to cater at all?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, or maybe, then I can't recommend enough possibly looking at like a gravity fed smoker,
Yes.
like a deep south smoker, which, is an awesome smoker. The things are built like tanks, but they're heavy, right? So I think you have to weigh the advantages and the disadvantages. I used to have a drum. I love drums. They're super light. You can maneuver them one person,
Right.
but there's a downside. And the downside is you can't really put a lot of meat on there, So
Correct.
for competitions, I think there's a reason they've taken over, because they are so light. They cook so fast. I see, and I don't know about you guys, but I see, these drum cooking teams, they're lighting their fires at 8 a.m., 9 a.m.,
Yeah. Yeah.
on a Saturday. So
We're not quite that hot yet. We're still in the 5 o'clock range. We're not running north of 350. I mean, I'm seeing some of them 400.
Yep.
I think that the one thing a lot about drums that people don't realize is if you go lower and slower with them, that smoke is so intense that it will, So what I'm getting at is I think you just about have to cook over 300 on them, because if not, it's going to apply so much smoke, and it's a harsh smoke, as you know. And so I think sometimes we used to try to do the low and slow on them, and it just don't work. You kind of have to get it on there, get the flavor on it, and get it wrapped, before the real intense smoke hits it. And it's like, how the judges are, you'll get hammered with that. But that's just something we've kind of picked up through the years, maybe the last couple of years. But goodness, they definitely apply the flavor to the meat, the drums do.
Yeah,
So
you're right. It's really tough to duplicate that flavor that you get from the fat dripping on the coals and all that smoke, all that flavor and moisture that's created inside that drum. And like I said, there's advantages and disadvantages to any type of cooker out there. And I think it's important that you understand both sides of it. And ultimately, at least the way I make decisions is if I've got more advantages than disadvantages, that's probably the one I'm going with.
I agree.
And like I said, I love drums. I think the Deep South Smokers and Randall Bowman came out with a great answer to that, and that's the Mailbox, which is basically I consider it a drum on steroids. It's got 3 levels in there. You can still get. It is, yeah. I mean, it's a beast, and it's my everyday workhorse. I mean, I cook on that thing 4 or 5 days a week. But to your point, if you try to run it low and slow, just like a drum, you're gonna have some very smoky meat.
Yes. Yeah. I think a trend in this area that we're seeing a lot is I was down this weekend helping a friend at Iron Station, and we didn't cook. My team didn't cook. And we saw 8 of the top 10 teams were on stick burners. And as a drum cook, obviously I don't like seeing that, because in the 9th and 10th place team were Brad and Urkel from Uncle Pig. So you're like, so what I'm getting at is I think, some of that, it's just something I've noticed. And me and one of my friends were talking, and you start to wonder, is that drum flavor hitting in this area like it does out in say St. Louis or we're can country is what they call it. But now you give Mötley Crüe and you give under the radar a little time on a drum and they'd probably be just as good. But as of right now, they're on the stick burners and it's a smooth smoke. Jambos and Outlaws, those things and they run, very flawlessly. So that's kind of scary. It makes me think maybe that, if we're going to stay in this area, obviously we will because we live here, but maybe that's something we need to look into as well. Because one of those, if you can't beat them, join them type deals. But I don't see that as much with the gravity fed, but there's something about that stick build or stick burner smoke. It's just, you don't even see it hardly come out of the stack.
Right. And I think that comes from, because I recently bought a stick. I recently bought a stick burner to teach myself how to cook on it. But I think a lot of that, with the gravity fed or with the drum, most people are using lump charcoal or briquettes, and you're going to get a much different flavor than you would with an actual, piece of split wood.
Right.
It's just it's going to cook differently. There's going to be different smoke, et cetera. So yeah, I think you're dead on the money. I think there is something to be said for the stick burners. And it really is, again, it's, I go back to everything has a downside. What's the downside of a stick burner? You're not going to get a whole lot of sleep.
No.
Unless you got a crew of like 5 and you guys run in like 2-hour shifts or something like that. So again, it goes back to really weighing the advantages, disadvantages, and then where you are, financially, what's your budget look like? How serious are you going to get into this? I wouldn't recommend, starting out and going to buy a Jambo. I mean, Jambo makes phenomenal smokers, but I don't know if that'd be a good starter one to have, but I also know that, it seems like, there's always this huge debate, right? Stick burners versus pellet and drum versus I mean, at the end of the day, it's your smoker. If you like it, who cares what it is?
I've got a 590 Rectex, and I always said, well, I don't want to, do pellet grills. And then once I got it, I love that thing. Like and I've competed with it down at Banjo last year and did pretty well. It's fun to cook on home. I guess I was one of those people. And, full disclosure, the flavor is not as good as it is on charcoal, but it's pretty darn close. And, people are beating each other's butts with those things every week. So I don't think I think once you get a pit, you learn it. My rib drum, I know what that thing wants to run, how it wants to run, what you need to put, once you learn that pit, it's, it's just, that's just the name of the game. And those dudes that run those stick burners, they know, when to add another split. Like I said, guy this weekend was beside us, a really good team. And I didn't even see smoke coming out of the stack. And I'm like, that thing just ran. And he finished 3rd overall and great team and good guy. But like you said, you can win on any pit. It's just a matter of putting your time in, practicing and making it work. I think, not being offensive to the judges, which who knows? We've tried before not to be offensive and still offended them. So it happens. I'm sure but
it is. And I think it's important that anybody that's new getting into it, or even as a reminder for the veteran teams, look, it's not personal. They don't know who they're judging, or well, at least they shouldn't. So
yeah, they should.
It's not personal. And here's another thing I'll tell you. The best way to get good feedback about your barbecue is to sell it. Because what I learned very quickly is if someone's paying for your food, they are going to give you good, hard, constructive feedback.
Yeah, that's
if
a good idea.
You're giving it to them like your friends and family, it's always going to be good.
Oh, yeah.
Always. So just remember that. I think that helped us. That helped us out a ton.
No, I agree. Good idea.
On the catering and vending front, when we started selling, and I started asking for hard, direct, honest feedback from everybody. And here's what I learned. 1, you get good feedback to improve things. But 2, that individual all of a sudden goes, I've never been asked for feedback from any food company.
Right.
And all of a sudden now, when they think of barbecue, they're thinking of you because you just simply took the time to get their feedback. That
Yeah.
is huge. I think to really, cement like your barbecue legacy in your area, make like build an empire. I mean, make no mistake about it. Like we are down here in Augusta, Georgia, trying to build an empire. We're not here to we're not pleased with 43rd place. I mean, we want to build a brand. And I think that's important for teams, right? I think it's important for teams to understand, speaking of branding, on a side note here for a second, social media. It's just, you got to do it. You got to do it. I mean, nobody likes it, but you got to do it.
I know me and you talked at the class about I'm letting my social media been taken over by my 13-year-old boy, and he's getting me followers every day. I'm not asking questions about how he's doing it, but I know that's cost me a couple of sponsorships through the years. As far as followers go and stuff. So, but yes, we've tried to make a little bit more concerted effort to add pictures and update after contests and but like you said, it is hard. It's something you have to be cognizant about and do it. So, but it's free. Social media is free, and if you can do it, you can get all kinds of feedback. And so you do a great job. Your pictures are great. Your posts are great. So you're well on your way to making that empire happen. You're doing a great job. You made a splash really quick. So you need to be commended for that.
Well, thank you. It's like I'm going to steal this quote from Blake Kitchens. A little plug here for Hound Hogs BBQ Supply. But he said on our show, he said, something to the effect of, my goal is to make sure at the very least people know who we are.
Right.
And I agree with that. That people need to know who you are because you never know who they know, and you never know who a sponsor might be calling. Hey, I know so and so and so and so, and they know you. That kind of thing. If you're calling, asking for sponsorships, I think that's a great way to build yourself up to be rejection proof. I think that's awesome.
Right.
So we had a guest on the show last week's episode. We talked a lot about how he got started and how he was asking for sponsorships. And I commend that because the worst they're going to say is no. I would just say that if you're going to do that, make sure that you have a strong social media presence, because if you don't have any, it's going to be really difficult to
they're not going to get anything out of the relationship. As far as one of our first sponsor was Smoking Ghost Barbecue. Paul is out of Illinois, and he parked beside us at Concord, North Carolina one year, and gave us some of his rub, and we kind of hit it off and applied there in the fall and got his sponsorship, and we still have him. And he's a great guy. Me and him will talk on the phone, text, talked to him for 2 hours one day after a contest, and we just went over things we were doing good and bad. And so that's nice to have relationships like that. And he's been in the game longer than we have, and he's a very good team. So, but I'm like I said, that's a if you're not giving that company something, they're not going to invest in you. So it's a tricky deal, but social media is such a a gateway to all that. So it's something we're trying to get into a little bit more, and you have to really make an effort to do it. So
that's right. It comes down to consistency. So let's shift gears for just a second and talk about some recipes. Now, I'm not talking about competition recipes, so I'm not going to put you on the hot seat there. But what's your favorite meat to cook at home for the family?
We're a steak family. We like steaks, but if we have just a Sunday afternoon, I love putting ribs on my drum, and I love hanging them when I'm not competing. Something about that char. I don't even use much wood, but the fat starts burning, and I'll wrap them. I don't inject at that point. I'm not going to brine or anything. I'm going to put just a basic rub that I mean, Walmart now has got Malcolm Reed, and they've got Heath Riles, they've got, any of those rubs will work. Um, and then I'm going to wrap them probably at the color. I generally wrap them in a big hotel pan with butter and apple juice. And I've used everything from cherry 7-Up to, cranberry juice or whatever. But collard greens, macaroni and cheese, and cornbread. And that's our go-to Sunday meal. Probably once or twice a year. We don't do that often, but Sunday afternoon, it's hard to beat that. Like I said, I don't go crazy on ribs, and I started to scale back going crazy on ribs in competition as well. But hanging those ribs, I've done it at a couple of competitions, and I do it at home and love it. And I'm like, why am I not trying this more, out there? But there's just something about them falling or something. It would be hard to to get back if that happens. So.
Well, that would just be considered cowboy style at that point if you're going right on the coals.
Right in the charcoal.
Yeah. Right in the
Who knows?
charcoal.
The judges might like that.
You never know. You never know. And so, hey, just to recap that though, so for our listeners, so we're talking about keeping it simple here, right? Taking a rack of ribs, whether it's spare ribs, baby backs. Personally, I like to cut them down to St. Louis style. That's just me. Right. But you saw this, you heard the simplicity here. Hit them with some, Killer Hogs, the barbecue rub, Malcolm Reed's amazing stuff, or Heath Riles competition rub. You can buy that at Walmart. It's great color, great flavor. It's got a good mix of heat and sweet. It's not on one end of the spectrum or the other. I think both Heath and Malcolm did a great job with those two rubs. I mean, they, but you heard the simplicity there. You hit them with that, you wrap them with some butter, maybe some apple juice, and there you go. It's not, it's really not complicated. And the ribs are done when the ribs are done.
That's right. Yeah. When they, I don't even probe them. You can tell by the pullback, the bend and the wrap. Both of those, there's still a lot of teams that use Malcolm Reed for color. That the barbecue rub puts a color on ribs that, I don't know that you could replicate hardly anywhere. Just about everyone's using Heath Riles, the garlic jalapeno as a base, probably just about on all four meats. It can get a little hot if you go crazy on it, but and his competition rub's just next level. It's really good. So all that, and it is nice to be able to go to Walmart and buy it, and not have to buy it online or use your comp stuff. But Lowe's has Mark Lambert stuff, and that's a good sweet rub of mine, I think it's called. And we've won money using that in comps before. It puts another color on it that's hard to beat. So I don't know a lot of teams that go crazy on practicing, on a Sunday afternoon, but I think you pick elements of different parts, and you might see when you can probe them and see, well, I'm at 208, I'm at 209, they're done. That may be a number you're going to look for to comp, and then you start probing at that point. But I had to take ribs this weekend to, I think, 211 because the weather was so bad, and I would have thought, they would have fell off the bone. Some of them did, but it just the meat wasn't getting done, and it's just one of those things. So you can pick up something from every cook, and that's
exactly
what I do at home.
That is a great point. Never stop cooking, period. Just cook consistently because you're going to learn something. Great point.
Yep. We love to cook here at our house. My daughters both cook, so.
That's awesome. Love it. And get the kids involved too. Another great point. All right. So we're winding down the show here. I want to camp out on a very important topic for me. You and I talked about it briefly during the class, and that is the future of competition barbecue. So at the beginning of the show, you talked about how, several competitions around your area have decreased in size over the years. So I don't think it's a secret to anybody that, obviously the COVID situation, 3 years ago, that obviously impacted it. But I also think it was slowly fading before then. So my question is this, because it's something that I care deeply about, and that is, what can we as teams do proactively to bring more value to these organizers in the hopes that we get more events equals more eyeballs, more spectators equals more marketing
money.
dollars.
Right.
Yeah. What are your thoughts there? What can we do as teams to be proactive?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. That's one of the things we all talk about, on Thursday nights and stuff. But it's also a very complicated question. I don't really know that there's an easy answer. I've always thought you have to involve the public at some point, somehow, whether it's cooking demonstrations, whether it's sampling. We try to be out. We have a trailer, but we don't cook out of the trailer. We generally cook out of a tent beside the trailer, and we try to engage with it because we've been there. We walked around. Like I told you about trying earlier. A couple of those teams invited us up, and we love those, but 95% of them did not. They were up in their trailers, and I get that. You're there to win a competition, you're there to win money. But if you're not involved in that public somehow, A, they're not going to show up. B, that I think the organizers are going to be like, we're losing money on this deal. Barbecue cooks are hard to deal with. We're picky. We want everything, power and water and good parking spots. And it's a lot of work for those guys, And if you don't have someone that really, really cares about that festival, they'll cut the barbecue out and just have a festival and probably make money, whereas they're going to lose money on the barbecue side. So I don't know the answer. I wish I did. I do think that and I've always said if Banjo last year or Greenwood had we're maybe 30 minutes for you to come and cook ribs or 30 minutes for us to come and do chicken, and maybe you pass that samples. That those people, I don't know the answer. I just think that maybe there's something to be done about that as far as involving the public. I think we've got to. If not, like I said, a lot of good competitions have gone away, and I don't think they're coming back. I wish I had a better answer for you. I haven't really studied that. It's something obviously that I know you're pretty passionate about. I am too. I just wish we had an answer that would help because we have lost a lot of really good contests through the years. And that's especially in the state of North Carolina and Georgia as well. Georgia's lost. We used to cook in Georgia a lot, and they've lost several contests, good contests, But I don't know what
you're dead on the money.
What do you think?
You're dead on the money. There is no. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think there's a lot of gray area. You're going to get 100 different opinions from 100 different pit masters, but I think ultimately engaging the public, I think, should be part of the competition agenda. That's really what I think. And I think if you start to incentivize teams, as an example, had a guest on Matt Osmond with Blinky's Offset Barbecue. He had a great idea. He said, well, why don't you give the teams that are willing to engage with the public from, again, I'm just picking a number out of thin air, but 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning on Saturday. Right. Give those teams that are willing to engage with the public during those set hours, give them an extra point towards their final score.
Or something off their entry fee or something,
Or offset their entry fee, or but I guess my point is I think there are several different ways to incentivize the ones that want to engage the public, and I get it. I understand people out there are like, hey, Mueller, shut up. We don't care about that. We just want to compete. That is their opinion. That is not mine, because I look at the long term.
And that opinion is why we've lost contests.
Bingo.
I mean,
that's exactly right.
Just like the People's Choice, I get bugged out, or it bugs me when teams are like, no, I'm not. And that helps. That's nothing but profit for those guys. Cook 2 butts. How hard is it? You've got a $10,000 smoker there, and there's a lot of teams that don't do it. We do it to help them out. They make a lot of money on those, and it's not that hard to do. You can cook before that, not even bring meat to them. But I do think that when you involve the public, it breaks my heart when people walk around our campsites or our sites and they're like, "Where's the barbecue at?" And we're like, "We don't sell. We can't sell." And they just have this look like so dejected that they were coming to try competition barbecue, and they're, they have to go eat, the vendors that aren't as good as ours, let's be honest. But I wish there was a better way, and I know a lot of it's just the organizers put so much work into just getting the teams there, getting the money from KCBS and all this. And then by the time they've done that, they're just exhausted and ready for the competition to be over. Julie and I think Laura at Greenwood do such a good job of, they kind of tag team it. And, when you have two people like that, you can kind of, divide and conquer a little bit more than some of these organizers. They just look defeated when you get there, on Saturday morning. So
yeah.
I don't know the answer, but I think that's probably a big part of it. Is if we could get the public involved more, they would come out, want to and attend, and you get, vendors and whatnot. So that's my
exactly
opinion.
Right. And ultimately, people are going to remember how you made them feel more than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's really, really important there. So again, we're talking with Stephen Parris. He is a pitmaster of Brother-in-Law Barbecue Team based out of Fletcher, North Carolina. Check them out on Facebook, Instagram as well, correct?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Check them out, see what they're doing. Look at their, they're putting out a bunch of new content right now. So engage with that. Stephen, we appreciate you coming on the show and enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, Kurt, it was good to join you. I appreciate you having me.